you seen enough of Matt Robertson to make a fair evaluation, or has his injury kind of put him in a different category?
I think anytime you're young and you're trying to make an impression, if you're not able to make that impression, it becomes a little bit more difficult. That being said, we think he's a good player. He's still here. He practiced, I think, with Schneider today, and will be in the game tomorrow. So we're trying to get that evaluation that you're talking about. I watched him down in the rookie games. I thought he had a real strong. I thought he was really good.
In those rookie games, there was a certain, I guess you expect a certain standard from him because he's an experienced pro playing against kids who may be in their first year.
Yeah.
And he met that standard.
He did. I thought there was a few players that came out of there that I thought made noise. I mean, I remember saying that when camps. So you want somebody to come in and say, oh, you want to be noticed. You don't want to just go through the game and be vanilla. And I don't think he was. I thought he played well. And so there was a plan to get him, additional games. But I think just based on what happened, and we're in this, you're dealing with all the time in camp, But he is back. He's practiced now. He was in a pair today that we're going to play tomorrow.
Speaking of injuries, Artemi, is there a concern that he might not be ready for next Wednesday?
Yeah, right now he's just out day to day.
Is he out for tomorrow, or is it possible tomorrow?
Well, I'm in the day, so that I'm on the front part of the day to day. I think when you're talking like that, your value, it's an evaluation. So right now he's day to day.
For him, has he had enough ice in this training camp?
I wish he was in the whole training camp. You know what I mean? This was only the second day of practice he's missed, but there's been a couple games that he hasn't been able to take part in, or just a very small amount of time. If you're asking me, would I rather all of the players be available to play the entire? I would. I mean, you'd want him in there. That's where you're getting your game reps. There's nothing that you can do about that. There's things that happen inside a camp, and so what I want or whether I think it's enough, it's all kind of irrelevant because this is actually what happened, and he didn't, the completion of those two games didn't happen, and so he's day to day right now, and to answer your question, I wish everybody was healthy and everybody got all the reps that they needed so that you can win the game one with everybody and having the reps that you want.
You have Hoffman in that spot today. He's going to be the guy, I presume, if he plays tomorrow, he'll be the guy who plays all of the preseason games. It's been up and down for him. I mean, what have you seen from him, and where does he stand as far as concerned evaluation?
So that if you're still here, you're still getting looked at and you're still getting evaluated. It's training camp, so tomorrow is an opportunity for him. That line will be together, and it's an opportunity for him to go out and continue to make a mark in training camp. Like a lot of players, I don't think everything's just been peaks the whole way, and that's just about every player that we can talk about. I think there's been some really good things. There's things that we talk to and show and want to get better at. And a lot of players fall into that category, but there's also been some good things that he's done. And he's a talented player that can make plays and put up points. And I think the evaluation process still goes on with him.
Obviously, without Panarin, it changes the equation for the power play units a bit. But it did look like what we saw. Lafreniere was in with Kreider and those guys. But what we saw looked a lot more like the unit that we saw last season. And I know you've talked about kind of weighing, distributing things a little bit differently, or going back to that unit that had so much success last year.
Right.
Are you having more thoughts on this at this later stage of camp?
Yeah, I mean we're talking about different things inside the room. So there's two parts to that. One, Panarin's not out there, and so that changes things right away. And two, we're trying to get ready for the start of the year. And we're also trying to give work to the units tomorrow night that possibly could be in place. And so you don't know how everything's going to plan out. So there's the the goal of what you have there's the point of what you have available, what you want to accomplish tomorrow night, and what you want to get ready for in game one. And sometimes the game tomorrow night helps game one, and so you want to look at things. And when people come out of the lineup, that makes it a little bit more difficult because you may not be able to get what you want on either one of those games. So you got to wait and see.
Do you feel like you need to get to see Igor play a full game in preseason?
Do I feel?
Like, because you've kind of given.
I think Igor looks good, and
Yeah.
you know, he will play a full game.
Yeah. On the PK side of things, I remember you mentioned, I think it was last week, that, you know, Will Cooley was in on all those meetings last
Yeah.
year. Now with VC being out, spots open, I mean, is Will a guy who you definitely want to test and see if he's a guy, you know, for the regular season you're going to use there?
He is a guy, yes.
About, just as far as his skill set, what would make him effective in that role? I mean, the progression, is that another spot?
I think the progression, I think the fact that he was in those meetings last year, he might have hit it a little bit, very little. He looks really good to me in camp this year. I think he's a smart player. I've mentioned that last year. There weren't a lot of discussions for a young player. There weren't a lot of one-on-ones. There weren't a lot of discussions. I think he reads the game pretty well. I think he's a smart player. And it, again, when you're on the top line, right, you're going to get your 5-on-5 minutes are going to be elevated. If you're on the power play, they're going to get elevated even more. And if you're on the penalty kill, well, then you're one of the highest minute guys on the team. Conversely, if you drop down in the order in the lines, and then you're not on the power play and you're not on the penalty kill, the minutes come down, and that's just math. We want to try and keep players in the game a little bit more. We feel like he could be a good penalty killer. That's why we've worked on it in practice and why we sat him in on meetings and now worked him in practice. We feel like he could be a good penalty killer, and it will keep him in the game and add minutes to his role.
He had a very good camp last year. He made the team last year. But when you take a snapshot of him from this year as opposed to last training camp, is there a stark difference as you see him?
I do think that there's a difference when I watch him play. I mean, he's playing with a couple of real good players in Phil and Capo. That's been the line that's been together through camp. That line has played well. We like it. I do see a little bit more from the offensive side, a little bit more confidence with the puck. You know, his year last year offensively for a first-year play was pretty good. And I'm sure that's the plan, was to train this summer, to come in, an expanded role, more opportunity, and then to take those next steps.
Bouncing around topics here, but one other thing I wanted to ask you about, just because it came up with a couple different defensemen in conversations recently who were talking about breakouts and wanting to be better in that area, especially in the playoff when you're facing some of those swarming forechecks and you can kind of get hemmed in your zone for long periods of time. You know, whether it's practice, meetings, you know, I'm sure it's a combination to kind of review that stuff and then improve there, but what are you, in your mind, what are the keys to improving in that area?
Well, I mean, we work on it almost every day. So there was breakout drills there today. It's about the routes. And sometimes when you're talking about a defenseman going back, you kind of isolate it to that one person, whether they do it well or they don't do it well. I believe it's a lot more than that. I believe it's oftentimes the whole 5-man unit to be back in position, the options that are available, the support that's on those passes, and if you're in the area or you just kind of standing out at the far blue line and leaving a guy back to, you know, die on the vine in the corner with 3 guys coming at him as fast as they can. And so it's something that we talk about and work on as a group. Breakouts we want to be good at. You want to get it out, you want to get it through, you want to get it in, right? You play in your defensive zone, you play in the offensive zone, and those are your choices. You want to play in the offensive zone. You have to be able to get out of your defensive zone, and that's why we work on it, we show it, and we talk about it all the time.
Is that an area, like, you know, I remember at the end of the Florida series, you know, you talked about wanting to generate more offense. I mean, like you're saying, to get into the offensive zone, you got to get out of the defensive zone. Is that an area that you look at, and especially at that time of year, is just critically important?
It is. I think everything's always a little bit elevated with regard to the playoffs. It's the speed, it's the physicality, it's the checking. Everything's a little bit tighter when it comes to the playoffs, but yeah.
When you came into this camp, we all made the point that, you know, there's not a lot of new faces, right? We had Smith and we had Carrick in there. But because of injuries and whatever, now you have a fourth line that is pretty much all new, right? I mean, you know, Edstrom and Renke played a little bit. Carrick is new. Is that, for that line specifically, is that something that is going to be an issue? The fact that there's 3 new guys playing together for the first time and, you know, what the role is that you're going to ask the team?
I thought the last game that we played with pieces of that, wherever they fall, I thought they were excellent. I thought that their first 4 or 5 shifts out of the gate the other night were excellent. They got it in. They did exactly what you want from a line like that. They got it behind the defenseman into the offensive zone. They were physical. They stayed there. They generated some chances. They played pretty good defense. They hit. They fought. I mean, I thought it was a really good job, and that's what you want, I think, coming from that line, is a line that can control it, get it in, play physical, and play in the right ends of the ice.